Uttamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udirayet Shrinvatam Swakata Krishna Punyashravana Kirtana Hridayanto Stiha Bhadrani Vidunoti Suhritsatam Nashta Prayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevayam Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki Om Ajnanatimrandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmalitamena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Om Namo Bhagavate Nasimhaya Namaste Jaste Jase Avir Bhava Vajranaka Vajradam Shrakarmase Randaya Randaya Tamograsa Grasa Om Swaha Abhayam Abhayam Atmani Bhuishta Om Shraum Namo Namo Aniruddhaya Hishikesha Indriyatmane Namah Paramahamsaya Purnaya Nibbatatmane Swarga Pavarga Dwaraya Nityam Suchi Sade Namah Namah Hiranya Viryaya Chaturhotraya Tantave. Okay. Hare Krishna. So thank you for joining us again for the continuation of our series of discussions and classes on the personalities of Srimad Bhagavatam. In one sense, we were meant to follow a certain order, but I'm also speaking out of inspiration, which is more natural. So at times there is a little bit of deviation from the original order that was presented as a part of the curriculum or the different personalities associated who are going to be discussed at different levels. So in the previous week, we spoke of Sri Narad Muni, and the summary is such that Sri Narad Muni, who is the spiritual master of Srila Vyasadeva, he is also the carrier of bhakti. In other words, he is found practically in every situation where there has been an experience of intense bhakti. So we find him initiating Dhruva Maharaj. We find him initiating Prahalad Maharaj. We also find him instigating Sri Valmiki to author the Ramayana in a certain way. We also find him talking to Srila Vyasadeva and clearing his confusion and initiating the composition of Srimad Bhagavatam. And as a consequence, we glorified Sri Narad Muni as he is also at the beginning of our parampara. So our parampara is the Brahma Gaudiya Madhav Sampradaya. So it's basically starting from Lord Brahma, who then initiated his son Sri Narad Muni, who then initiated Srila Vyasadeva, who then initiated Srila Madhvacharya, and the lineage continues right up to our spiritual masters in the present generation. So the point being that he is the beginning of our parampara as well. Now, what is very significant about the previous session? The previous session focused on Shrinvatam. The Bhagavatam very specifically tells us and rather clarifies very clearly that in the present yuga, which is Kali Yuga, the only thing that you're meant to do is to listen. By listening, one has the ability, one develops the capacity to cross the ocean of material existence, just by listening. And what do we listen to? We listen to Srimad Bhagavatam, we listen to the glorification of Srimad Bhagavatam from the lips of devotees. So in another sense, that in the lineage of Srila Vyasadeva, we have all been motivated to learn Srimad Bhagavatam, and we are also speaking Srimad Bhagavatam as we receive it, and we are inspired by our spiritual masters. So the Shrinvatam is the principle, listening is the principle, hearing is the principle which is being spoken of. There is a mystical arrangement, and I just want to bring this up. There is a mystical arrangement on the construct of the psychological or the ethereal body. You see, we have a subtle body and we have a gross body. The gross body, which is the material body, which is the body made of flesh and blood, and then there is the subtle body, which is the subtler aspect of the five material elements. So the five material elements of earth, water, fire, air, and ether, they have a gross form, which is our physical body. They also have a subtle form, which is the subtle body. Now, in the subtle body, there's a mystical arrangement. The mystical arrangement of the subtle body is that intelligence is also a component of the subtle body. We all hear of the components of the subtle body. So we have mind, intelligence, and false ego. So in that sense, intelligence is a component of the subtle body. The mystical arrangement of the subtle body is such that the hearing process, the process of receiving information through the ears, you see, you can receive information through different senses. You can see certain things and perceive the truth. You can hear, you can smell, you can taste. These are different levels of senses. Sense perception allows us to arrive at conclusions about different aspects. These are all sources of knowledge. The mystical arrangement of the hearing process is such that when one is able to hear, one also develops the capacity to digest information that is being heard. You cannot practically see something and digest it to the extent to which you can digest what is being heard. What do we mean by this? Because when you hear from a qualified speaker who has heard from other qualified speakers, who has faith and who is engaging in sadhana, their faith is passed on through sound vibration. The sound vibration of the qualified speaker allows us to digest truth which is seemingly unattainable. So that's the reason why reading Srimad Bhagavatam and listening to Srimad Bhagavatam are being distinguished. We are talking about listening to Srimad Bhagavatam from someone who has digested Srimad Bhagavatam because of the mercy of the disciplic succession. And the understanding of the speaker is passed on through sound vibration. The power to digest comes in the form of sound vibration. Please understand that this is a very subtle concept. The subtle concept is the power to digest a complex truth is given to us in the form of sound vibration, which enters through the hearing process. So this is a mystical arrangement. That is what the Srimad Bhagavatam wants us to do. Srimad Bhagavatam wants us to surrender to the disciplic succession, hear from the disciplic succession, and as a consequence, develop the ability to digest extraordinarily complex truth. This is the same principle of initiation into mantras. The spiritual master speaks the mantra into the ears of the disciple. By speaking the mantra into the ears of the disciple, the spiritual master is also passing on his understanding of the mantra. He is passing on Krishna Sambandha. His relationship with Krishna is also passed on in the mantra. So the sound vibration contains the relationship of the spiritual master with Krishna, which is received by oral reception. We hear it. When that particular message and sound vibration enters into our heart, it extinguishes desires for material existence. It practically establishes itself because it is so potent. This is the reason for Srimad Bhagavatam insisting that you should hear. And how did Srimad Bhagavatam begin? Srimad Bhagavatam begins with Pariksit Maharaj hearing from Sukadev Goswami, practically establishing that this is the beginning of Kali Yuga. In the beginning of Kali Yuga, all you can do is hear, and if you hear, you will be delivered. This is the message of Srimad Bhagavatam. So that's the reason why Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya is being spoken of. And when we talk of Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya, we're talking about the personality of Grantha Bhagavat, which is the scripture Bhagavat. We are also talking about the personality of the devotee who is also a Bhagavat, who is following the scripture of Bhagavatam. Both of these personalities, when we come in touch with them, have the ability to deeply entrench and basically establish faith in our hearts. And this happens through oral reception. This happens through hearing. So hearing contains the sound vibration. It contains faith. It contains Sambandha Gyan, which is the knowledge of the devotee of Krishna, which is practically the relationship of the Guru with Krishna. That is also contained in the sound vibration. All of this is passed on. Right? So this is a critical aspect of Srimad Bhagavatam, hearing. So reading is one aspect, but then hearing is considered to be far more important. And that is the encouragement given in the Srimad Bhagavatam. And that is how Srimad Bhagavatam begins, literally. Srimad Bhagavatam begins in the beginning of Kali Yuga. It begins at the beginning of Kali Yuga. One of the reasons, it is said, one of the reasons for a great personality like Pariksit Maharaj to have practically been drawn into the controversy of insulting a great sage. That controversy, which was to insult the great sage, that particular controversy, that is not something which Pariksit Maharaj would have ever done. It was the time factor. The time factor changes the quality of time. When Kali Yuga began, a great ruler such as Pariksit Maharaj could no longer be on the planet. When Kali Yuga began, a great personality like Pariksit Maharaj could no longer be on the planet. Krishna departed just before Kali Yuga. Pariksit Maharaj had to depart. So the onset of Kali Yuga required that Pariksit Maharaj give way for Kali. So he practically had to leave. So the time factor, which is the supreme time factor, overwhelms Pariksit Maharaj, and he acts out of that particular overwhelmed circumstance. So the departure of Pariksit Maharaj was not due to any sinful reaction, it was due to the time factor. Now we are talking about Pariksit Maharaj, and we need to understand the circumstances of his birth. We need to understand his family. What is so wonderful about the Pandavas? If we read the Mahabharata, we notice that the Pandavas go through all kinds of tribulations from day one of their birth. All kinds of tribulations. Then comes the extraordinary battle of Kurukshetra. In the extraordinary battle of Kurukshetra, the Pandavas basically are also losers in the sense that they lose so much in terms of their family members, they lose so much in terms of even their children. Abhimanyu, he is killed in the battle. His 5 brothers are killed in the battle. There are so many young generation kings and their princes who are killed in the battle. Now, when all of this is happening, and Mother Uttara, who is the wife of Abhimanyu and who is basically carrying Pariksit Maharaj in her womb, she basically confronts a circumstance which is very grievous. So it begins with first the killing of the 5 sons of the Pandavas. The 5 sons of the Pandavas are beheaded while they were sleeping by Ashwatthama, the son of Drona. And when he beheads them, he carries these heads. It sounds quite horrible. He carries the heads of these children and he goes to Duryodhana. And he says, look at this. I have done this for you because you were humiliated and you have been pushed out of the kingdom. I have practically killed the sons of the Pandavas and here they are. You know, this is for your glory. Duryodhana was not pleased at all. He wasn't pleased. He was very unhappy that Ashwatthama did this because this was completely unnecessary. They were sleeping, they were unarmed, it was not dharmic. Duryodhana was not a coward. So he didn't quite appreciate the way this was done. He was not a coward at all. He was completely misled and he was confused and he had objectives which were completely the opposite of what Krishna wanted. That is all true, but he wasn't a coward. So he completely rejects Ashwatthama's action, saying this is completely, it's nonsense. You shouldn't have done this. Now, at the same time, Arjuna meets Draupadi and he's consoling Draupadi. When you hear the consolation of Arjuna, you would notice that it is quite extraordinary. It is very extraordinary when you read this in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Arjuna is telling Draupadi, do not grieve. You should not grieve because I will search this Brahmana. I will kill him with my arrows. I will bring his head. You can stand on his head and have a bath after our sons are cremated. Can you imagine this statement? This is Arjuna's statement in the Bhagavatam. This is like horrible. Sounds very horrible. It's macabre. He says, I will kill him. I'll bring his head. You stand on his head. And then you can bathe after our sons are cremated. So this is basically Kshatriya language. And Draupadi is a Kshatrani. She is also a Kshatriya, and she is extraordinarily an intense personality. She is as intense as the Pandavas. She's a very intense Kshatrani. So she basically also is of this nature. She can be of this nature. So Arjuna is basically trying to pacify her by telling her that I'm going to punish him so severely and I'm going to bring his head, you stand on his head and then you have a bath. Yeah, this is what Arjuna is telling her. But then Draupadi at that time does not respond because she's grieving. It's unimaginable. the mother of 5 children who have just been killed, is just unimaginable. She's just grieving. Arjuna and Krishna, they set off. They capture Ashwatthama and then they bring them back. Krishna is very angry. He's telling Arjuna, he's saying, don't spare this person. He is not to be considered as anybody who is associated with you. He has violated all kinds of principles. He should be killed. This was the instruction of Krishna. But Draupadi, seeing Ashwatthama, realizes that she should not go through, his mother should not go through the same grief that she went through. She also feels that this is the son of the Guru Maharaj of Arjuna. So the son of the Guru Maharaj is considered to be family of the Guru, which is as sacred as the Guru. So she's again advising Arjuna, saying, no, you should not harm him. Let him go. So in many ways, she is conveying the fact that you must punish him, but then don't kill him. Because killing someone who is a Brahmana is not considered a good thing at all. And at the same time, she also does not want to have Kripi, who is the mother of Ashwatthama, go through the same grief. So this very unusual circumstance, Krishna is insisting there, saying, don't spare him. Krishna is saying, don't spare him because he should not be spared. But then his devotees are so compassionate in their hearts that even though they're going through such grief, they want to give a long rope to Ashwatthama. So Arjuna basically insults him. Ashwatthama, the head of Ashwatthama is shaved up. It's considered to be a great insult. Then there is a jewel which is in the forehead of Ashwatthama, which is embedded. That jewel is removed. Because he has killed children, he has already lost all kinds of brightness. He looks very dull. The jewelry is removed from him. He looks even more dull. Then they chase him away. This insulted personality, Ashwatthama, he is very badly insulted. And he carries that insult. He even says, Krishna, basically he would have preferred dying than to be left alone. Because to be insulted in that manner is worse than death. So he is just insulted and he's let loose. He carries all that anger. And when he carries all that anger, he seeks to cause greater harm to the Pandavas. He again picks up the Brahmastra and he fires the Brahmastra on Uttara. Uttara is pregnant with Pariksit Maharaj. Pariksit Maharaj is in the womb of Uttara, and this Brahmastra is basically meant to kill the last of the Pandavas as well. This is what Ashwatthama wanted to do. So it's a proper lesson for us to learn. What do you notice in the Srimad Bhagavatam? Scripture advises very severe punishment for the mode of ignorance. Have you noticed in the Srimad Bhagavatam that right from the onset, we notice that very severe punishment is handed out whenever there's a violation. Pariksit Maharaj, he lifts his sword. You will notice the sword being lifted, very deadly punishment is given when there's to the mode of ignorance. Because the mode of ignorance, it cannot learn lessons. It cannot learn lessons. You can't pacify and reason with the mode of ignorance. It is better to end it. This is also the state with the creation. Why does Lord Shiva destroy the creation? He destroys the creation because at some point we find that the creation's mode of ignorance has predominated to such an extent that there can be no progress whatsoever. This is like a child which is building, some castles with clay putty or with sculpey clay, modeling clay. When they are modeling with clay, they reach a point where nothing much can be done because it has really reached a very bad shape. So they just destroy the whole thing and then they begin again. In the same manner, the demigods destroy the earth when they find that the mode of ignorance has penetrated to such an extent that no reasoning can ever get to the senses of people. When you can't penetrate dense consciousness, it is better to begin again. There is a reason why in the Bhagavatam you notice very severe punishment being given for the mode of ignorance, because the mode of ignorance does not understand. It can't be taught. You need basically to have and hand out heavy punishment, and otherwise you can't really understand. This is what the situation is. Now what we notice here is that Ashwatthama, who is in the mode of ignorance, he was advised to be put to death by Krishna. Krishna said, put him to death. Krishna could foresee the next action by Ashwatthama. he could foresee that Ashwatthama was going to again cause some harm to his devotees. He basically advised Arjuna. He said, kill him. If you don't kill him, you're going to face problems. You can just kill him because he's meant to be killed. He can't be salvaged. He carries too much burden. Karmic burden is so heavy on his shoulders, you can't salvage him. Kill him. This is Krishna's advice. Arjuna chooses to ignore this advice. Draupadi they chose to ignore this advice, and then they go with it. So at that point in time, Krishna says, okay, I've advised you to do it, but you don't want to do it because of your wonderful Vaishnava compassion. I will still protect you. So this Brahmastra was fired by Ashwatthama again at Uttara, who basically has just lost her husband. Very young girl. She's become a widow at a very young age. She has lost her husband, and she's carrying this baby in her womb who is extraordinarily special. And she is being attacked so that the child could be killed, could be aborted. This is what Ashwatthama's plan was. What does Krishna do? Krishna basically assumes a very minute form, and he protects the baby. No fetus could have survived the level of heat which was generated by the Brahmastra. The Brahmastra generated intense heat, and that heat was about to consume the fetus fully. But Krishna protected us by his potency. Pariksit Maharaj was protected. The understanding that we have is that Pariksit Maharaj, while in the womb of Uttara, his body was destroyed, but it was restored again by Krishna. So he came out unharmed. His body was destroyed, but it was restored again by Krishna. So you can imagine when Krishna himself is intervening and giving you a physical body, how can that physical body be an interference in the pursuit of Krishna consciousness? When Krishna is arranging something, it can never interfere with Krishna consciousness. When Krishna is arranging a circumstance, it can never interfere with Krishna consciousness. This is a very important lesson, devotees. Please understand this. If you are only going to desire Panchanga Bhakti, if you're only going to desire pure devotional service, anything that gets arranged in your life is going to be a great blessing. Please understand this. This is a very important aspect of existence. Whatever gets arranged would be extraordinarily auspicious, and you would be able to proceed a lot further than you could in a normal circumstance. So in a similar circumstance, Pariksit Maharaj's entire body was going to be destroyed, but that destruction was prevented. Krishna replaced his body by protecting him and giving him a body which was going to be free of blemishes, which was caused by the Brahmastra. This protection practically gave Pariksit Maharaj an existence which will not interfere with Krishna consciousness. Does it make sense? This particular existence which was given was not going to interfere with Krishna consciousness. I'm going to stop here and see if there are any questions so far, because this is an important point. When Krishna is arranging something for you, that will not interfere with Krishna consciousness. If you arrange for things by yourself, there's a potential for interference, because we cannot really desire pure devotional service. We have an issue with our lives. We desire based on our senses. We desire based on stimulation of the environment. If we desire based on Shastra, the outcome of life will not be inauspicious. That lifestyle will not interfere with Krishna consciousness. When we desire independent of Shastric conclusions, our lifestyle interferes with Krishna consciousness. How many of us in this audience are struggling with their lifestyles which are not conducive with Krishna consciousness? How many of us are struggling?
Almost everybody, I guess.
Can you speak up? I can't hear you. Sorry.
Almost everybody, Prabhu.
Almost everybody. Why is it so? Any clues?
Because we are planning for our lives instead of taking Krishna's plan.
Why? No, see, basically what we are today is an aggregate of our desires of the past 20, 30 years. Does everybody agree?
Yes, Prabhu.
what we are today is an aggregate of our desires of the previous lifetime. In the previous lifetime, we desired a certain future. That future has been created today. And when we observe our life today, we would understand that 20 years back, 30 years back, 10 years back, or even 5 years back, we were not desiring Krishna consciousness actively. We were not desiring pure devotional service. We were not desiring wanting to chant. We were not desiring association. We were not desiring Bhagavatam. We were not desiring. And today our lifestyles, which have been created, are independent of the transcendental desires which are spoken of in Shastra. Because our lifestyles have been created in this way, they interfere with Krishna consciousness. Does it make sense?
Yes, bro.
This is quite a dangerous proposition because we have desired ourselves into a circumstance which is quite difficult. On the other hand, Pariksit Maharaj is so fortunate that Krishna comes and he intervenes in the womb of his mother and gives him a physical body, which is Krishna's own desire. As a consequence, nothing can interfere with Krishna consciousness. Does it make sense? This is so powerful. Having a mother, having a father who are Krishna conscious is so powerful for the children, because then the desire of the mother and father, while they are bringing a soul into their womb, is going to play a huge role in the future of the child. This whole future of the child is being marked by a desire by the parents to bring a Vaishnava into this world. It's in such an auspicious beginning to start with. Then the soul comes into being, then we are giving opportunities for Krishna consciousness. It's very powerful just to understand that if you desire what Shastra is asking you to desire, few years from now, you will find that your life has changed for the better. Few years from now, we will find that anxieties are gone. Few years from now, we will find we are able to practice Krishna consciousness so nicely that we are actually very happy in the Sangha of devotees and being able to serve. Challenges have disappeared. Why so? It's because we are desiring Krishna consciousness actively. You see, the trick is not to desire a good husband or wife. Yeah, devotees, the trick is not to desire the individual components of life. If we are single, we desire company. This is a part of the eating, mating, sleeping, defending. Defending requires company. So the whole idea of being and feeling lonely is simply a situation where we feel that we need to defend. Yeah. So this is simply one of the symptoms of eating, mating, sleeping and defending. Now, this is a bodily situation. So while being single, if we desire which is not going to help. I'm being very emphatic. It is not going to help for you to desire success in your workplace. It is not going to help to desire a certain kind of partner. It is not going to help to desire certain outcomes for the future. The reason is you can never know what is going to work out. It's very difficult for us to pinpoint what is good and what is bad. You can't trust ourselves. What is the best way to desire and create a future? The best way to desire and create a future is for us to desire what is given by Shastra. When you start desiring the Shastric aspects of wanting Sangha, wanting to chant, wanting to read and share Srimad Bhagavatam and hear Srimad Bhagavatam, you're creating a future. Does it make sense, dear devotees? You are creating a future by desiring the positive aspects of devotional service. Your life will change. Few years from now, you will find yourself in circumstances which are far better than you are today. You cannot solve your problems today by desiring aspects which are independent of Krishna consciousness. You can't desire partners. You can't desire for a job. You can't desire, because those things in general, you don't have the power, because the karma is so limited. Our power to manage our future and to create things for the future is so limited. It's a liability. But we have great power to desire Krishna consciousness because we're connected to a parampara. When we desire Krishna consciousness, a future is created. And that future is always auspicious. So in this way, in Brihad Bhagavatamrita is a conversation between Pariksit Maharaj and Mother Uttara. After Pariksit Maharaj hears from Sukadev Goswami, his mother Uttara wants to know, what is it that you have heard from Sukadev Goswami? What did you hear, my son? Uttara is asking Pariksit Maharaj, what did you hear from Sukadev Goswami? And that particular conversation between Pariksit and Uttara is captured as Brihad Bhagavatamrita. In the Brihad Bhagavatamrita, you find that Yudhishthira and the other Pandavas, they are externally grieving because they have lost so many relatives. Internally, they are situated in a circumstance which is conducive for devotional service. Why is it so? Because in the initial part of their lives, they arrange their lives based on their karmic reactions. In the latter part of their life, they arrange their lives based on Krishna's arrangement. The whole battle of Kurukshetra was Krishna's arrangement. The outcome of that battle was Yudhishthira became a king. Becoming a king by Krishna's arrangement will not interfere with Krishna consciousness. Becoming a king due to karma will interfere with Krishna consciousness. They were very disturbed. So when they come as kings, they're very disturbed because there are so many different challenges. But then you become a king by Krishna's arrangement, no disturbance whatsoever. We also read in the Srimad Bhagavatam, as we go further, we will see there is Maharaj Ambarish. Maharaj Ambarish, he had a vast kingdom, and the beauty was he managed the kingdom by managing pure devotional service. It's quite extraordinary. He was a great devotee. He was a Bhava Bhakta. He just focused on pure devotional service to such an extent. It is said that the Sudarshan Chakra, the weapon of the Lord, used to hover on top of Maharaj Ambarish's kingdom and protect the citizens and do the duties of the king when the king was engaged in pure devotional service. Krishna practically dispatched his weapon. Krishna basically sent the controller of the time factor. The Sudarshana disc, the weapon of the Lord, is the time factor. The time factor, Kala, is the weapon of the Lord. He practically sends his own time factor to alter the consciousness in Ambarish Maharaj's kingdom so that the king can engage in pure devotional service. So what is the principle I'm trying to teach here, I'm trying to share? Can anybody summarize the principle, please? What is the principle we are trying to talk about? We spoke about Pariksit Maharaj receiving a body made by Krishna himself. Krishna protects Pariksit Maharaj from the attack of the Brahmastra, and after protecting him from the attack of the Brahmastra, he manifests a body which is also given to Sri Pariksit Maharaj. So that body cannot interfere with Krishna consciousness. Our bodies interfere with Krishna consciousness. Our bodies, the senses, they disturb us. They don't allow us to engage in Krishna consciousness. But if the body is given by Krishna, then it does not interfere. So what is the principle we draw from here? This is a very important principle. What is the end principle?
The principle is that we should accept whatever Krishna's arrangement. Then only we will be successful in achieving Krishna consciousness.
Accepting the arrangement, yes. What else?
Also the following Shastras, following Dharma in Krishna consciousness.
Following Shastra. Basically, desiring, the point I'm trying to make is, we have no power on the material level. Because we have no power on the material level, our desires do not get fulfilled. Because our desires do not get fulfilled, we become unhappy. Our frustration is because our desires are not being fulfilled. On the material level, we just don't have any power to manifest our desires. It's very limited. Some defect would be there. But on the spiritual level, the ability and desire to engage in spiritual service is unlimited. The desire to engage in spiritual service is blessed by the entire parampara. It is blessed by Lord Chaitanya. It is blessed by your Guru. It is blessed by Prabhupada. There's great, enormous power in desiring and manifesting devotional service. When you desire devotional service, when you desire specific aspects of devotional service, You have the entire parampara, including the Lord, behind you. This is great power. With this great power, you can arrange for your life. With this great power, you can find yourself in circumstances which are very conducive, and you can find yourself in circumstances which have zero anxiety. The idea is desire pure devotional service, desire the Shastric conclusion. Even if we are not sincere, make an attempt to desire, because we don't have power to change our lives based on material desires. We do not have a power to change our lives based on just our karma. Our spiritual desires carry great potency because they're connected to a parampara. They have the ability to change our material situation and project us nicely. Does it make sense now, devotees?
Hare Krishna.
Yes.
This is Padmavati Nitai Matadasi.
Yes.
Even a spiritual desires, even you just attempt and we want to do, sometimes if that doesn't come right and it takes longer, so there will be a little bit of anxiety, isn't it, Prabhu? What will
Which is fine. Yeah, which is auspicious. Yeah, which is auspicious. So, for example, if that anxiety is auspicious, that despondency is auspicious, the manifestation of anxiety because we are not able to act out on the instructions of the spiritual master, the anxiety that we are not able to act out on the instructions of Shastra is a powerful, powerful way to focus the mind. For example, when we try and accomplish and we want to do something, say, for example, you are preparing for a class.
Yeah.
When we are trying to prepare for a class,
Yeah.
Every one of us has an opportunity to speak at different situations. The focus on preparing for the class engages the mind and absorbs the mind in Krishna. In a similar fashion, when we are unable to execute a certain aspect of devotional service in terms of trying our best, doing so, but not being satisfied, then it is also an absorption, which is perfectly fine. But if there is anxiety because we are not able to move forward at all because material circumstances have become extraordinarily, extraordinarily difficult, then that anxiety is because we haven't been able to surrender as yet.
Prabhu, this is actually my own experience, my own circumstances I'm trying to understand. It is not because material. Sometimes it is a very difficult preaching wanted to do, but it's not coming right because of the psychology, the situation of the country, all that. So still trying to find which way would be good, what to do it. So how am I going to conclude? Like I sometimes think, is it not the desire of the Lord? But when I pray, and then I sometimes ask, Lord, if this is not right, you just let me know this is not right. But always I get the answer saying no, like move forward. But it is not happening. So I don't know.
Okay, I get your point. Yeah. So Mataji, here's the situation. The way we need to accept it is that we need, for number one, regardless, when we put in our efforts,
Okay.
we also need to understand that the outcome is not controlled by us.
Okay.
That's the first point. The second point, Lord Chaitanya's mission is such that his orders that the holy names be spread throughout the universe, that order carries immense potency. Whoever takes up that order receives power, and on account of it, they are able to accomplish things. So in other words, we are merely instruments who are engaging in the service of Lord Chaitanya for our purification. His order and his desire will happen regardless. That is a second understanding that we need to have as well. So we can put in our efforts for our purification, we can move forward, we try our very best, but then we again leave the results to Krishna. We also have an understanding that his desire to do certain things will work out. Now, if we observe the lives of our acharyas, it's quite astounding, and you will notice, and I'll give you some examples here, because it's a good question. When Jiva Goswami, Prabhu, Srila Jiva Goswami, he sent our entire body of Gaudiya literature, which included all the works of the Goswamis, there weren't printers. Those, you didn't have printing presses. You just had single copies. They were handwritten. All of these were collected. This entire treasure of the work of the Goswamis were collected. They were boxed and they were given to Narottam Das Thakur and Srinivasa Acharya. And the request of Srila Jiva Goswami was to take that particular content and distribute and bring it to Bengal. Now, it is read that they chose an auspicious time, they set out. And the thieves, basically, someone stole the entire body of work. You can imagine what I'm trying to say is these are very powerful devotees. These are Premi Bhaktas, Narottam Das Thakur and Srinivasa Acharya. Who would imagine that they are carrying our sacred literature, and it was not even, I would say, there was nothing mundane about it. It gets stolen. It gets stolen, they're put into deep, deep anxiety, and they retrieve it again. So in that sense, the anxiety there and the despondency they may have felt is also a matter of them experiencing a certain kind of closeness and proximity and surrender to Krishna, where Krishna again manifests his mercy. So that is one circumstance. The second is, you will also notice that basically the Gaudiya Math, which had so many branches, which was created by Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, that practically collapsed after his departure. So you can imagine that something that was carrying the entire mission of the Lord collapsed. We noticed the same thing at our institution after the departure of Prabhupada, in the sense that the whole institution with all its resources practically came to a standstill with his departure. The point I'm trying to make is sometimes even distinctly very spiritual activities also meet with obstacles, and those obstacles are also to be taken as a part of the evolution of the person into higher levels. So we need to learn to put in our very best, but then also understand that Krishna is there and his desires are going to be paramount. Krishna consciousness is quite complex in the sense that we have to do everything as if it depended on us, but also have the understanding that it is Krishna who is actually the doer. So it's a complex arrangement. So the internal understanding is, I'm doing my very best. I will do things as if it depends on me, but Krishna, you know what is best. So you manifest results. So that's the understanding. You had Prabhupada, for example, starting an entire business of pharmacy, wanting to distribute so that he could build money. That catches fire. Everything is destroyed. Okay, everything is destroyed. He is rendered penniless. When he is starting out on his mission after sannyas, he is gored by a bull in Vrindavan. He ends up in the hospital for 2 months. It's just quite complex to imagine. Even Srila Prabhupada, just before the beginning of the mission, of such an important mission, is lying in a hospital in Vrindavan because a bull decides to gore him. Can you imagine that? So the point I'm trying to make is that the purification that we do have and the anxieties that we have are indeed stepping stones. All we need to do is keep constantly pushing forward, desiring outcomes, and then at the same time understanding that Krishna is the controller and he would eventually do what is most appropriate for his movement. So it's a combination. Ultimately, whatever has to happen has already happened. It's just not manifest. That's the point. We have to put in our efforts.
Thank you very much, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Any other point actually on this topic of desiring things for a better future, desiring aspects of our life which would ensure that we don't interfere with Krishna consciousness? Krishna doesn't interfere with Krishna consciousness. Sometimes we think he does. Sometimes people make a remark that, I'm going to the temple, I'm doing 16 rounds, I'm doing all I need to do, I'm doing my service. Why is it that the certain aspect of my life is constantly frustrating me? Krishna, why are you not making it easy for me to practice Krishna consciousness? Can Krishna interfere with Krishna consciousness, devotees? Is he even desiring to interfere with Krishna consciousness? He doesn't. Krishna facilitates Krishna consciousness because that's his thing. We interfere with Krishna consciousness. We stand in the way with our desires. We manifest things for the future which become complex. We make complex material arrangements which require an enormous amount of effort to just manage. And that complex arrangement takes us away and takes our future away from Krishna consciousness. It's very distracting. So this is a very important principle to be understood from Pariksit Maharaj. We have to understand this principle. His body was given by Krishna. Now understand the mentality of Uttara, his mother. You can't really bypass Uttara. She has just lost a husband in the war. She has lost many other relatives, her own brother, her father. And Krishna was present. Krishna was fully present when all of this was happening. Now, any normal person would make an observation saying, you were fully present when the Pandavas lost everything. You were fully present when my husband lost his life. You were fully present when my husband's brothers lost their lives. You were fully present when my own brother and my father lost their lives. Why should I have any faith in you? Wouldn't this question come up? Any other person would have practically given up. They would have said, it doesn't work. He does not help. There is no God. They would have become atheistic. This very young girl who was widowed and she is pregnant, such a traumatic circumstance. When the Brahmastra is being fired by Ashwatthama and she's carrying Pariksit Maharaj in her womb, she does not run to Arjun. She is not running to Yudhishthira. They're all very competent warriors. Whom is she running to? She's running to Krishna, saying, Krishna, save me. Only you can save my child. Where is this confidence coming from when she has seen the same Krishna not doing much for Abhimanyu or for the brothers of Abhimanyu or for others? Where does this confidence come from? It's actually a very, very powerful display of faith. It's extraordinary faith. That's the reason why the Pandavas were so special. That's the reason why Mother Uttara was so special. Tribulation after tribulation, she loses her parents, loses her father, loses a brother, loses a husband, and then as she grows older, the only person who is going to support her is Pariksit, and he's also going to be leaving before her. Quite such a difficult circumstance for any lady to go through. But what does she do? She runs to Krishna to save her child. Who would have such faith? Who would have such faith to run to someone who practically wasn't available when everybody else were passing away? You know, someone else would have just lost it, saying, you're God. Why did you not help my husband? Why did you make him die? This question would have come up in someone's mind, but it didn't. She comes running to him saying, only you can save. You can save. This is a very extraordinary aspect of their lives, the Pandavas. They were so special that they could accept. They were so special that they could accept the circumstances as good fortune. The first canto has several sections on Mother Kunti, her prayers, and we notice that she's also asking for tribulation. So anyways, born to such a mother and born to a father like Abhimanyu, who was practically raised by Krishna, Pariksit Maharaj was also given a body by Krishna after the body was destroyed. His material body was destroyed and his body was replaced by Krishna's potency, practically giving him a body which wouldn't interfere with Krishna consciousness. And this great Pariksit Maharaj, as long as he was alive, there was no question of Kali Yuga coming on. The onset of Kali Yuga cannot come on when he was alive. This was practically the beginning of Kali Yuga that Pariksit had to leave. If he was the king, he would not allow things to happen for Kali to manifest. But because Kali Yuga had to come on, one of the reasons is that you basically also notice that Pariksit Maharaj is also being removed from the scenario because Kali has to come. Where would Kali go? He has to come. The onset of Kali practically took Pariksit Maharaj away. So we notice that as well. Now, let us study a little bit and talk a little bit about Sukadev Goswami as well. And we are going to talk about the personality of Pariksit Maharaj. We're going to talk about the personality of Uttara and Kunti and so on as we go further as well. I want to touch upon the extraordinary nature of the devotional service, the extraordinary mindset, their mindset. They must not have been suffering. Does everybody here think that they could have possibly been suffering so much? Could we be in such intense suffering and still be favorable towards Krishna? What is happening here? Obviously, they're in a lot of pain. There's an enormous amount of pain. Uttara is going through an enormous amount of pain due to the loss of her husband. She is going through enormous amount of pain due to the loss of her relatives. But what is happening here that she's still able to have so much faith? So what's the distinction of her experience? Does anybody want to comment on this? Is she suffering? Is she suffering? She's in pain, yes, but is she suffering? Yes.
I wouldn't say she's suffering, no. I mean, she's an associate of Krishna, so that's it gives her an opportunity to surrender onto Krishna, which obviously she already has. And she's, in my opinion, probably experiencing transcendental bliss because of that.
She is not suffering is the conclusion that you have, yeah?
Yes.
Yeah.
And you're also saying that's because she's associating with Krishna. She has a relationship. There's Sangha and there's Sambandha, yeah? Is that your statement?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so there is Sangha, there is Sambandha. She's not suffering. Is she in pain?
Yes.
Yes. You do agree that she's in pain. Okay, so she is in pain, but she's not suffering. Isn't that interesting? That she is in pain, but she's not suffering. Because if you are in pain, you don't need to suffer. Sometimes the pain can stop and the suffering can continue. Sometimes the suffering ends and the pain can continue. So there is no suffering even if there is pain.
Yeah.
In her circumstance, she has deep pain because of all the anguish that she has been put through. But she is not suffering. If she was really suffering, then she wouldn't be running towards Krishna. She wouldn't. She would not have the capacity to run towards Krishna and ask for help. Where would that faith come from? Where would the confidence come from? Because Krishna Sambandha has removed the suffering. Because Krishna Sambandha has removed the suffering and has reached her. Because Krishna Sambandha is basically completely transformed her consciousness where she is not identifying fully with the body. She's not suffering. Krishna Sambandha allowed her to be transcendently situated. As a consequence, she is not suffering. This is a very, very important point again. Otherwise, why would she run towards Krishna asking for help, knowing fully well that yes, he is God, but he didn't do anything for my husband. He was on the battlefield. He didn't do anything for my brother and my father. He didn't do anything for the brothers of my husband. Why should I run to him? Wouldn't I be better off with Arjun? Why not run towards Arjun and say, Father, please help, because she was, the daughter-in-law. She could have just run towards protection, towards the Pandavas for protection. But her faith and her Krishna Sambandha were so strong that she was not suffering even though she was in such deep pain. Now we understand from this the distinction between pain and suffering. So one can be in pain and one may not suffer. The circumstance of pain and suffering are distinguished by the fact that they have come in touch with deep knowledge, Gyan. Once the Gyan comes, the pain can remain, but knowledge goes away. Suffering goes away. Because of knowledge, suffering goes away. She is able to identify with her spiritual self. She is able to see Krishna in proximity. She is able to understand that I'm not really suffering, but I'm in pain. Then she is able to ask for help. So this is a very big distinction as well. So there's so much truth to be had in these relationships and these experiences. So when we ourselves come closer and closer to Krishna consciousness in this lifetime, even if we are in the early stages of evolution in Krishna consciousness, our anxieties have gone down. Why do you think the anxieties have gone down? Anybody? Some of us experience a lack of anxiety. If we are completely anxious, about material life whilst participating in Krishna consciousness, we need to question ourselves. One of the most bewildering aspects of Krishna consciousness is to have a devotee who is unhappy, very unhappy. If you're very unhappy, it means there is a great identification with the body. If you're very unhappy, please understand that there's a great identification with the body. If you are really connected to Krishna consciousness, then there cannot be such a circumstance, even under the worst of circumstances, which is what we see with Mother Kunti and Uttara, which is what we are seeing in this particular circumstance. If she's running around, being widowed recently, but still running to the same person who could have protected her husband. but she has such deep faith because the relationship is established, the sambandha is full, the suffering is absent, even though there's such great pain. So if we are suffering, please understand that we have moved ourselves away from Krishna. It's time we put life back together on the table and we start looking to see what we could change for us to come closer. It's very important for us to do this. Very, very important. Very important. At this stage, I would also like to make a remark. There is a misunderstanding about Krishna consciousness which normally exists. It is thought of as walking on a plain field. It is like walking miles and miles and miles, and Krishna and Radharani are under a tree, and I just have to reach there. As long as I'm on the road, I trudge along and amble along, I'm going to reach there, and then Radha and Krishna are under a tree, I can go and serve the divine couple. This is a normal understanding. It is actually quite faulty. Krishna consciousness is like scaling a peak. If we don't have the intensity of wanting to climb a mountain, then we will find ourselves stagnating. And while stagnating, we would find that things are not working out. You need to scale the mountain of Krishna consciousness by increasing and intensifying your sadhana and your activity on a year-by-year basis. It has to happen year by year. Every year, we have to sit down and see if we're doing better. Not the same as last year. Every year, every day has to be better. When we start scaling and climbing the mountain of Krishna consciousness this way, where we are constantly examining our effort, constantly examining the outcomes and climbing, then we will find that we are making deep progress. Otherwise, we stagnate. And because we are moved away from so-called material sense gratification, and because we haven't taken Krishna consciousness quite seriously, we are stuck in the middle and we become miserable. This is the truth about devotees. Devotees feeling unhappy is because they are stuck in between. It's very important for us to understand this. They need to figure out how to let loose and move forward. If we are stuck in between, we're going to feel miserable. Because the senses need gratification, we stop that. And then Krishna consciousness is what is supposed to give us great spiritual progress, and we're going to become happy by kind of engaging our senses in the service of Krishna. If that doesn't happen properly, then you're stuck in the middle. Then we feel miserable. Then we feel as if nothing is working out. So you need to go back to look and see what is working with life and to re-examine our involvement in Krishna consciousness and to better look at how to change things. This is going to be very important for us. So this is again the second principle which is coming through, is that you either have to be very well situated in Krishna consciousness, which is going to help us. Otherwise, what we will feel is that we can't really take this lightly. It doesn't work. Any questions on this comment again, please? Because these are important aspects of it. Because these are devotees with very complex lives. Their lives are extraordinarily complex. Being involved in a war, losing everything, losing the husband, and then the child is being attacked. This is very extraordinary pain. It's extraordinarily troubled circumstances. But yet, they seem to be wanting more and more of Krishna. So this is something for us to understand. So this is an extreme example which is being given to us. These are extreme circumstances, extreme. And Krishna is there, and Krishna is showing us through the Srimad Bhagavatam in the early stages that even in such extreme circumstances, my devotees are happy. They are not suffering. As a consequence, they are able to move forward. Any questions again? Comments? Okay. So we spoke of Pariksit Maharaj, but we will elaborate more as we go along because his qualities will come out as we go further into these sessions in the future. We also wanted to introduce Sukadev Goswami. In the previous session, we spoke of the fact that Srila Sukadev Goswami, he was liberated. He was a liberated soul. He was a liberated soul. He was a Brahmavadi. He believed in the fact that attaining Brahman, crossing over the material ocean, is the goal of life. So he was already a liberated personality. How is it possible that such a liberated personality could find use in the Srimad Bhagavatam? We spoke about it in the previous session. I just want to see if people remember. What is it that we see here? Are liberated souls also going to benefit from the Srimad Bhagavatam?
I think, Prabhu, here in this liberated means probably they are liberated from the modes of material nature and are connected deeply with the Brahman aspect of realization of Krishna, or maybe Paramatma maximum. So the Krishna Gayanas is to connect to the even higher aspect of the personal aspect of the absolute truth. Yeah, I mean, this is what I thought.
Okay, good. Basically, Brahmavadis have attained liberation. They are free from the influence of the material modes of nature. What is missing in their lives, which is going to be given by Srimad Bhagavatam?
It's to know absolute truth, like building relationships with.
Good. Relationships. Relationships are missing. They do not have rasa. They have not experienced rasa. They have not experienced the personal relationship with God. Srimad Bhagavatam does not speak about God. It goes beyond the conception of God. Srimad Bhagavatam begins with the Gayatri Mantra, which basically offers liberation. Srimad Bhagavatam begins there. The jurisdiction ends for the Gayatri, and then Krishna Sambandha begins from there on. Krishna Sambandha is basically the understanding of Sambandha, which is relationship with Krishna. So we begin there. And the liberated souls who are liberated are entering into the first verse of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Now they're diving deep into understanding this relationship. Now, how is it connected to our sadhana? Our sadhana, when I say sadhana, I literally talk about chanting of the holy names, nothing else. Because the Yuga Dharma is to chant the holy names. How is this particular aspect mapped onto our sadhana process? How is liberation, relationship, how is it mapped on to the sadhana process?
Chanting, Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Yes, Hare Krishna.
Yeah, chanting is a calling out to the Lord, and that is the building of the connection. That's a connection that you have your time with the Lord. So that's what we are looking at, and it's a relationship, and it's a one-to-one when you chant.
Yes, all of that. Now, what we want to do is also understand it from the perspective of Shastric conclusion. What is it which Srila Rupa Goswami has given us as stages of progress? Anybody remember the stages of progress of a devotee in sadhana? Adau, Shraddha.
Yeah.
First, there is faith. First, there is faith. Then there is sadhu sangha. Then once you come in touch with the sadhu, you're engaging in bhajana kriya, which is the sadhana process of deity worship, chanting, serving. The bhajana kriya leads to anartha nivritti. What is anartha nivritti? What is an anartha? That which has no meaning.
Variable.
Yes, sorry. Go ahead, please.
No, yeah, I was going to say the same thing. That it's like something that's bad. That's gonna stumbling block for your progress.
Basically, that which has no meaning is an anartha. So if we have desires separate from Krishna, these are anarthas. So basically, the whole process of sadhana is such that as we chant, our faith deepens, we engage in association, we chant more, and our chanting process purifies material desires. During the process of anartha nivritti, how will the chanting be? How will the chanting be?
Very distracted.
Offensive. Would you say it will be offensive? We will be committing offenses, yeah?
Yeah.
So yes, distracted is offensive. Being offensive and committing offenses, these are distractions. Basically, we would be committing offenses while we chant, and this is the process of anartha nivritti. During the stage of anartha nivritti, we have many desires that are distinctly away from Krishna consciousness. When we sit down to chant, we find it difficult for us to call upon the holy names. We find it difficult, basically, for us to even call upon the holy names in a stretch, because once you start calling upon the holy names, you remember stuff that you want accomplished. You sometimes are distracted by desires that were not fulfilled. You sometimes are distracted by certain other disturbances. These are anarthas. The mind is not still. The mind is filled with all kinds of rivulets of desires that are coming in, which are distinctly away from Krishna consciousness. Now, devotees, when would desires be largely present in the mind? When will the mind be agitated by desires? In what level of consciousness, when you talk about ignorance, passion, goodness, at what stage will desires be intense?
It's mode of passion.
Exactly. The mode of passion, desires are going to be quite intense. The whole process of anartha nivritti is for us to elevate ourselves from the lower mode of passion into higher modes of goodness, and eventually cross over the material mode of goodness as well into the spiritual sky. So the process of anartha nivritti is marked by difficult chanting. It is marked by all kinds of effort just to keep the mind still. So you have 80% of the effort in keeping the mind still. I'm saying predominant effort in keeping the mind still and free from disturbances. 20% goes towards Krishna consciousness. That is anartha nivritti. Once there is nivritti, which is freedom from such desires, this occurs automatically at the higher mode of goodness. So in one sense, situating ourselves in the higher mode of goodness, which is waking up, having a certain diet, following certain habits, automatically positions ourselves for success. This would automatically qualify us. As we go higher, once the anartha nivritti is over, when the chanting process purifies us of all these desires and we go higher, we reach the point of being liberated. Being liberated from material energy is also being liberated from all these desires, unwanted desires. At what stage of chanting would a devotee be liberated? A devotee is chanting offensively. He is committing namaparad in anartha nivritti. At what stage would he be liberated in chanting?
I think Shuddhanama, Prabhu.
Shuddhanama is different. Shuddhanama is the ultimate stage. There's a stage before that.
Shraddha.
Namabhas.
Namabhas. Shraddha is faith. Namabhas. Namabhas, abhas means it's a reflection. Abhas means it's a dim reflection of the truth. So in the stage of namabhas, we are granted liberation. Can you imagine? We are granted liberation at a stage which is interim. This is not the goal of Krishna consciousness. The devotee who is liberated already is situated in namabhas. And the devotee who is chanting offensively is in anartha nivritti. He is basically in the lower modes. And the devotee progresses further and situates themselves in the higher modes and completely frees himself from passion, and then he's experiencing higher levels of consciousness. This is basically namabhas. In namabhas, one can consider themselves liberated from material nature. This is where the liberated souls exist. They are liberated from material nature, but they have not developed a full understanding of the relationship with God. Sukadev Goswami was liberated, but he had not developed a full understanding of his relationship. Sambandha was not fully on. So that Krishna Sambandha was given by hearing and speaking Srimad Bhagavatam. He was told and taught Srimad Bhagavatam by Vyasadeva himself. When Vyasadeva gave him knowledge, Vyasadeva gave him his relationship with God. When the speaker was Vyasadeva, he is talking Srimad Bhagavatam, the sound vibration conveyed the relationship of Vyasadeva with Krishna into the heart of Sukadev Goswami. He carried the relationship of his father with Krishna along with the details of Sambandha. He became extraordinarily attracted. His Sambandha developed. He found that his liberated state was very preliminary compared to what was received. So that was the beauty of Sukadev Goswami coming in touch with Srimad Bhagavatam. So Srimad Bhagavatam is meant for also those who are liberated. So those who are on the way and those who have reached liberation, all of them can benefit because Krishna Sambandha is received. We come in touch with Krishna through Srimad Bhagavatam. It is directly Krishna, non-different from Krishna. Sukadev Goswami was so fortunate. The father and mother of Krishna are Devaki and Vasudeva when they gave birth. Yeah, you can say that Krishna manifests himself, though there is no such thing as birth for the Lord. Krishna manifests himself in the pastimes on the Bhumi through Devaki and Vasudeva. The Bhagavatam manifested through Srila Vyasadeva. The same personality who gave birth to Srimad Bhagavatam, his realizations, he passed on those realizations and his understanding to Sukadev Goswami. While passing on the understanding to Sukadev Goswami, this liberated soul, Sukadev Goswami, became enthralled and ecstatic because he received Sambandha. So that's why, even for liberated devotees, Bhagavatam is important. Big liberated devotees are at an interim stage in the chanting process. Our chanting process is so powerful that the initial stage, which is filled with offenses, it practically frees us from material nature. The next stage, Namabhas, we are on the liberated platform. When we chant in the liberated platform, 90 to 100% of our effort in chanting goes towards Krishna Sambandha. We are not fighting with our mind, our senses are not distracted, our desires are not flowing in saying, stop chanting. We are able to receive complete benefit of chanting. In that particular stage, one advances quite rapidly. And Sukadev Goswami advanced very rapidly when he heard Srimad Bhagavatam from Vyasadeva. And he passed on the same benefit, the oral reception, the speaking and hearing process, right? Kirtanam, Shravanam, Kirtanam. This particular process was passed on to Pariksit Maharaj. It was quite extraordinary. And he was supposed to be quite an extraordinary personality, liberated to such an extent from material nature that his internal mindset was such that at a very young age, he just walked away from home because he didn't find any meaning in home. It is said that he was liberated within the womb of his mother. As a consequence, there really wasn't a circumstance of him being liberated outside. He just walked away from home. Srila Vyasadeva was despondent. He could not even do the samskaras. He just walked away. He was liberated. He said, I have no use for the samskaras. What are you going to purify in me? I'm liberated. What samskaras are you going to put through? What is it which I can benefit from the samskaras? Because I'm already free from the influence of material nature. The samskaras that we do for a baby are supposed to purify the baby, help the baby withdraw itself from material nature. But here was a person who was already freed. I'm liberated. He just walks away. It's practical. There's also this instance which is being said that there were women, and in Vedic society, it's quite extraordinary for us to understand culture. In Vedic society, women never covered their faces. You see, we see in North India, we see women covering their faces, putting the chadar on their heads and covering. This was not Vedic culture at all. This was introduced by the Muslims. This was introduced by the Muslims because when the Muslims dominated Vedic India, they introduced customs because they were very bothered by seeing women on the road. So as a consequence, the women were forced to cover themselves. This was introduced by the Muslims. In South India, even today, where Vedic culture is present, you wouldn't see women covering their heads. You wouldn't see that. So those days, there was a certain comfort for the women because in Vedic culture, and women were bathing in a pond. And when the women were bathing in a pond, Srila Vyasadeva walked past them and they immediately covered themselves. When Sukadev Goswami walked past them, and he was 16 years old, Vyasadeva was very senior by age, they did not cover themselves because his internal liberated state was such that he was projecting that consciousness into the environment to such an extent that they were not bothered. They were not bothered by his presence because he really had no intention of connecting with material energy at any level. When his father passed by, they covered themselves. Srila Vyasadeva is transcendental. He's an incarnation of the Lord. And it is said that they covered themselves because he was a grihastha. A grihastha has knowledge of the opposite gender. A brahmachari who is very pure has no knowledge. So Sukadev Goswami just walked by and they did not feel compelled to cover themselves. Vyasadeva walks by, they cover themselves. That was Sukadev Goswami. Very powerful, very young, liberated, and completely free from the influence of material nature. And this personality was wandering And while he was wandering in the forest, and he basically was given this particular tutoring by Srila Vyasadeva of Srimad Bhagavatam. And at that point in time, his ecstasies began. So Pariksit Maharaj was so fortunate to come in touch with Sukadev Goswami and to hear Srimad Bhagavatam from Sukadev Goswami. Sukha is said to be a parrot. Shuka. The mangoes that are tasted by the parrot, you find mangoes in India. If you grew up in India, we did, and we used to find the mangoes that have been bitten in the tree and they're hanging in the tree. They have been eaten by the birds, the parrots. Those mangoes would be extraordinarily tasty. They'll be very sweet. It's just a natural condition. So in a similar fashion, the Srimad Bhagavatam, which has been tasted and spoken by Srila Sukadev Goswami, has become even more enhanced because it has come from the lips of Sukadev Goswami. So he was so special. So the circumstance of Pariksit Maharaj and Sukadev Goswami was such that Sukadev Goswami shared his heart with Pariksit Maharaj. There were others who were present there. Sutta Goswami was present there in that gathering. There was a handful of gathering. There was a small group which sat with Pariksit Maharaj. And Sukadev Goswami began this Bhagavat Saptaha, the discussion of the truths of Bhagavatam. And this was heard by Sutta Goswami, and he passed on this information to others in Naimisharanya. That is how there was a large assembly which got it from Sutta Goswami. It was first spoken by the Naranarayana Rishi to Narad Muni. Narad Muni passes on this sweetness and this information to Srila Vyasadeva. Vyasadeva passes it on to Sukadev Goswami. Sukadev Goswami is now passing it on to Pariksit Maharaj, but then indirectly Sutta Goswami is also hearing. And then it is being passed on to all the sages in Naimisharanya. So the sweetness of the Bhagavatam is enhanced even further because it has been touched by the lips of Sri Sukadev Goswami. Quite extraordinary. Quite extraordinary. So what questions do we have in addition? Do we have any questions?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Yes, Hare Krishna.
Priyanka here. I've got one question, Prabhu. You said about, desires while we are chanting. And the desires, they are on the mode of passion. Now, sometimes I do have a desire, for the family members, like mothers have desire for the children, make them Krishna conscious, or they should chant and things like that. So will that be, again, an offensive chanting? And I don't know, if it is offensive chanting, how can I work around that kind of desire?
Well, basically, Krishna is the holy name. The stages are that the holy name first manifests itself in our heart. And when the holy name manifests itself in our heart, because the holy names are non-different from Krishna, the next stage is for Krishna himself to show himself in our heart. So in that sense, what I am trying to say is, when you are calling upon the holy name, the extent to which you are distracted, to that extent, you will not have the holy name situated in your heart. So is it because of distraction of wanting to give Krishna consciousness to others, or is it distraction of wanting to basically achieve something material? Those are different topics. The point I'm trying to make is it's a consolidated aspect of life. So when you're really chanting the holy names, after all these rivulets have stopped, you will find very clearly the mind can't disturb us. The senses cannot disturb us. You would find that you're able to distinctly hear the holy name. There's no disturbance whatsoever. This is achieved by elevating ourselves from the lower modes to the higher modes. So how do we improve upon our chanting? Regardless of what desires we carry, if we are not able to hear the holy name when we speak it, then there is an issue. So how do we improve upon it? We improve upon it by targeting to increase the mode of goodness. What time to go to bed? What time to wake up? When do you chant? So where do you chant? Do you chant in the same place, day in and day out? Are you sitting on the same cushion? Are you facing the wall? Sometimes it helps to face the wall. You see, so the more and more you do things on a daily basis which are repetitive, the mind would learn to calm down. The more and more you do things that are repetitive, the mind will learn to calm down. So if your anxiety is about how can I make my family members chant, then make an attempt to give them Krishna consciousness. do your chanting very sincerely, and that way what would happen is Krishna himself would make arrangements for the family members as well. That would be
Right.
the answer.
Right. Just one more thing. You know, when we chant, like I'm not sure. Obviously, I chant. I've got on an altar, and I just sit in front of the altar in a separate room we have. So I chant there. But you know, when I don't know, is it okay to chant, walk and chant, and sit down on in the living room and chant that way? Because I can't focus then. Where I can focus is in front of the altar. So I don't know whether is that okay to make an habit and improve on chanting anywhere.
Well, basically, I would start with trying to consolidate the experience by sitting and focusing in a certain place.
Right.
I would not try and teach the mind at this stage. The mind can't be taught that easily. It's very difficult to control the mind. So the best way to do it is to find what is it that is going to allow you to hear. What is it which is going to allow you to repeat and hear? Find a place for yourself which is going to allow you to repeat and hear nicely. That place has to be consistently groomed. And a second point, if you sit in the same spot day in and day out, then that particular spot also develops a certain potency. It clears out the cobwebs of material nature. Then if you go back to that same spot, then there's some remnants of what you did yesterday, which is already there. And you can draw from that experience as well, which is positive.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Prabhu.
Not at all. Thank you. Any other question, devotees? Comments?
Yeah, Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Yes.
In the class, in the beginning, excuse me, you said that this mode of ignorance will get a severe punishment. But
Yes.
what we around us and in family or in friend circle, everywhere, most of the things we do are in mode of ignorance only. But when we don't see the result immediately, we take it for granted. And even if we try to preach like this is not the correct way, suppose like my colleagues are friends who drinking and meditating, if we say this will give you bad result, then people say it's oh, who cares about who knows whether next life is there or not. This is the only life, we need to enjoy all that. So here I get confused, like how can we convince, even though we know the value of this human form of life, to convince our family members and friends? It becomes tricky because when they say who knows the future, let's enjoy now, and they will worry about only success in the material life. As long as they get success and things are going fine. So how can we bring them into Krishna consciousness in this case?
See, a fundamental way to bring people into Krishna consciousness is to follow the principle of Srila Rupa Goswami, which is Sevon Mukhehi Jihvado. Work on the tongue. So offer apples, if you're good at baking, bake some cookies and bring it to the office, offering it to Krishna. Invite your friends to Kirtan. Don't share restrictions in the early stages, because what do they have in life anyways? When they have not been given Kirtan, when they have not been given Prasadam, they haven't even tasted Krishna consciousness. So we should first give them an opportunity to taste. So inviting them, for example, the 24-hour Kirtan, inviting them to a festival where good prasadam is being served. These are very powerful ways to bring in people into Krishna consciousness. The philosophy should follow after the fact, and there is no need to make them stop. Higher taste is a matter of experiencing higher taste, which would allow them to give up lower taste. So first, let them experience higher taste. So give them prasadam to the extent you can. Invite them for kirtan. Let the process of Krishna consciousness come into their lives. Then slowly, steadily, they would then be able to move forward. You don't need to start with telling them not to do something. That's my advice.
Yes, Prabhu. Yes, Prabhu. That's true. Thank you, Prabhu.
No problem. Any other comment or question?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Yes.
The stage of Anat Nivritti, at that time, when you do chanting, maybe some days you really feel, yes, this is what I really wanted to do every day. And you feel that, you feel this is what, because when you know how you should chant and you hear everything. But the next day may not be the same. So why it happens like that, Prabhu?
It's a stage. It's practically a stage. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has spoken about this particular aspect of unsteadiness, this unsteadiness of utsahamai, where one day we are very enthusiastic and the next day we are not enthusiastic, this upside down. This is basically a stage. It's a stage in evolution. It's good to know that our behavior and our experiences are according to Shastra. But how can we improve upon it? The improvement, again, is to ensure that we work towards bringing ourselves to the mode of goodness. And I'm emphasizing this. You should strategize for the mode of goodness. What time do you go to bed? What time and what do you eat? All of this is going to matter. So once you start strategizing towards chanting, then Krishna himself will notice that you're wanting to progress further because you're taking such effort in wanting to chant. And then more and more opportunity to chant would also be made available. So it's a stage. The answer is it's a stage. It is meant to be that way while this unsteadiness, the disappearance of this unsteadiness is what is considered to be auspicious, because then you are in the next stage. So the advice is improve upon your chanting, improve upon the experience of the mode of goodness, and you will slowly, steadily see that things are changing, and this stops.
Okay. Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Sure. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, I wanted to ask, what texts would you recommend us reading to deepen our understanding of the stages of bhakti and the 5 aspects of bhakti? So, for example, like Nectar Devotion and Madhurya Kadambini.
Yeah, well, basically, the 2 verses from Nectar of Devotion have been extrapolated by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, and there were essays that were written by him. And the essays of the 2 verses became the Madhurya Kadambini. So, yeah, I have spoken about the Madhuri Kadambini and Harinam Chintamani on my website as well. So if you want to understand the stages, I would recommend that you could listen to the lectures on Madhuri Kadambini, which is available on sandhini.com. You could go there. It'll help you.
Thank you.
Sure. Anything else, devotees? We'll probably give 1 more minute and see if there are questions, and then otherwise we could sign off for the day. And
Prabhu, could you please repeat the 5 stages of progress in sadhana, like Ado Shraddha, Sadhu Sangha?
yeah, Ado Shraddha. First there is faith.
Yeah.
Then there is Sadhu Sangha,
Yes.
which is association with devotees. And then there is Bhajana Kriya. Then there is Anartha, Nivritti, that is stage 4. Then there is Nishta, which is being fixed. Then there is Ruchi, which is taste. Then there is attachment, which is Ashakti. Then the 8th stage is Bhava, which is the beginning of loving emotions. The beginning of Prema is Bhava. These are 8 stages.
Okay, thank you so much.
Sure. Any other comment or question, devotees? We are going to continue talking about Pariksit Maharaj and Sukadev Goswami and so on as we go further, because it's not that I could have covered everything about their personalities this afternoon. We are going to talk further as well as we continue, because they are basically the vehicles through which we are receiving Srimad Bhagavatam. So they are going to be sharing their realizations, and we will touch upon those as we go along with the next sessions.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, this is Krishna Vani.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Sometimes, devotees, they trying to become more Krishna conscious, but they are, like facing problems through their families, like they're not what you call helpful for them, and they are struggling. So what do you say about that? How can you advise the people who are, like suffering, like they cannot, advance in Krishna consciousness because of their family, like interactions.
The complexity. Basically, what we would need to understand is that we need to follow the tenets of the Bhagavad Gita in understanding this as well. There is a very, very powerful spiritual mindset or technique which is being advocated in the Bhagavad Gita. And this very, very powerful technique which is being advocated is advocated in verse 9.22, where Krishna says that I'll carry what you lack and I'll preserve what you have. You see? 9.22 of the Bhagavad Gita. Now, what does it mean when he says he's going to carry what we lack and he's going to preserve what we have? It basically means that every circumstance that we find ourselves in life, however complex they may be, those circumstances, even though they have been created by our desires which were not linked with Krishna consciousness in the past, we should still accept the circumstances of life as being arranged by Krishna. In other words, if you find yourself in a very complex circumstance and you find yourself struggling because just to manage the circumstance and to exist and to chant and to serve, you're finding it a struggle, you should involve Krishna in the circumstance. The trick is, just as much as we can buy a basket of apples and then we bring it from the market after paying a few pounds, we offer it to Krishna, this material apple, which is basically material nature, that becomes transformed into spirit by coming in touch with Krishna. In a similar fashion, we should make an attempt to give our life to Krishna and understand this entire circumstance that I am in has been created by you. It could very well be that the circumstances of life have been created by karmic reactions. But if our mindset becomes that, Krishna, I have all of these issues, but I'm sure it is your arrangement for my progress. If we do this meditation, that everything that we are facing is practically an arrangement for progression in Krishna consciousness, it will become a progression in Krishna consciousness. If we understand, on the other hand, that the circumstances of life have nothing to do with Krishna, then the circumstances of life would remain a source of great distraction and pain. So the transcendental trick, which has to be adopted by devotees who find themselves in seemingly complex situations, is for them to simply offer all those circumstances to Krishna with a meditation that, Krishna, you have arranged this for me so that I could come closer to you. Even if Krishna has not arranged it, because we are offering it to Krishna, he will get involved and those circumstances will become an arrangement for Krishna. It will become an arrangement for us to move forward. It's a transcendental trick. You should try it. We should all try it. We should meditate on our life circumstances. We should simply say each day has been arranged for the purpose of me being able to go forward. Krishna knows exactly what I need. I only know what I want. And Krishna has arranged this wonderful circumstance. The moment you start meditating on it this way, you will find that Krishna is providing solutions for us to get out of the circumstance if it is not helping, or he will basically make the circumstance auspicious so that we can come closer to him.
Okay, thank you very much, Prabhu.
Sure, Mataji.
Beautiful answer.
Anything else, devotees?
Hare Krishna Prabhu, sorry for asking another question.
Not at all.
Yeah. Prabhu, Nistha and Namabhas, so they are interconnected. Is that correct? My understanding, Prabhu?
Nishtha, yes. Basically, once one is liberated,
yeah,
and because there is no obstruction to the chanting, and they're able to hear, and they're able to come closer to Krishna as Nama,
yeah,
then the unfolding of Nama begins. In other words, Nama, which is Krishna's name, starts revealing Nama, Guna, Rupa, Leela. So Nama is the beginning, name, right?
Okay.
Then guna is qualities, rupa is form, and then lila is pastimes. This starts coming out from the name because in a liberated stage in namabhas, you're able to spend 100% of your energy in chanting rather than being distracted. It's almost like sitting down and then doing your 16 rounds. If your 16 rounds are being done where you would notice that, let's say, a predominant aspect of the 16 rounds are now fighting with this mind to keep control, concentration is being affected. If that's our particular situation, it is the opposite occurs in namabhas, because in namabhas, then one gets to hear the name presents itself in the heart, and as a consequence, then one develops deeper understanding of their relationship with Krishna. So nishtha, being fixed, is essentially being fixed in the understanding of who we are in relationship to Krishna.
Prabhu, there was one more, please. When I look at the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra and chant, I could say, it's not that I'm saying I'm 100%, but if I'm going to just put us on a scale, I will be 100%. But if I just take my eyes away from that names, then the mind is just conquering. So, so why is that, Prabhu? Is it because of my visual? It is easy for me to connect. Is that the reason?
Visual into what? I'm sorry. Visual and looking at Krishna. Is that what you're saying?
At Mahamantra, a card. Or
okay. So, I get it. So you're practically reading the card.
Yeah.
And also chanting, and as a consequence, you're saying your concentration, your ability to pronounce is far greater.
Yes.
Yeah. See, some of us are visual. Okay. Some of us are visual. Some of us have very good ability to chant. So, for example, in my case, I can't chant with others. I need to be alone. I tend to face the wall. I tend to close my eyes. Yeah. I tend to do the opposite. But in your case, you're more visual. As a consequence, you're wanting to read. And one more sense is being occupied. So you're chanting, your sense of speech is being occupied, your tongue is being occupied, you are hearing, your hearing is being occupied, and then you're also visualizing. So one more sense is also being occupied. As a consequence, you're able to concentrate better.
Okay.
So that's what it works for. I mean, if that works for you, continue that. There's nothing wrong with it.
Okay. Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Prabhu, one more question. While chanting, I cannot sit and chant. I don't know. I have to walk. And if I sit down, I try to concentrate at lotus feet of Lord, but after a few minutes, I'm gone. So I tried so many times, but I am not still succeeded in sitting and chanting. So what is the advice?
See, when we can't sit still, it is because there is a greater level of the mode of passion which is predominating us. Not being able to sit still is because there's a greater level of the mode of passion which is influencing us, which is the reason why it's distracting. So if you have the ability to concentrate while walking, do so. But my advice would be, again, strategize to increase the mode of goodness. How do you do it? You basically also, whilst you strategize for the mode of goodness, I think we'll just wait because Mataji was the one who asked the question. So we strategize for the mode of goodness in such a way that you wake up, you are ready to chant, you do your Guru Puja, and then you start chanting. This would give you the ability to increase the influence of the mode of goodness. That will be my advice. Basically, the defect that I see when we walk around, we feel that we can't sit still is because there's passion. To manage this passion, you can't manage it at the same level. You need a higher force to manage the lower force. So you need the mode of goodness. So when we start doing the mode of goodness, where we start doing Guru Puja, we start doing deity worship, and then we sit down and chant, then we have a greater level of experiences and absorption.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Sure.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, I just wanted to share something.
Sure.
Before chanting, if I start doing my Guru Maharaj's Pranam Mantra and then Srila Prabhupada, and then whole Guru Parampara, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati, everything, and then Rupa Sanatana, and then Mahaprabhu, Sri Chaitanya, everything if I say and then start chanting, I really experience much help, that which I can't do it on my own. Whenever I do the whole everything and then start chanting, even I pray to like Krishna Balaram, everybody Srimati Radharani, and then start chanting, it is really very different experience. I just wanted to share this.
Oh, thank you so much, because it's the truth actually. There are devotees who spend almost an hour praying before chanting. So yeah, it's a fact. Yeah,
Yeah.
it really helps.
Yeah. Thank you, Prabhu.
Sure.
Sorry, one last question from me, Prabhu. When we are ill or not physically well, how would you suggest to chant then?
I really don't think there really is anything different. When we are ill, we simply have to, that's the easiest thing to do, to be honest. In one sense, it's difficult, but the easiest thing to do is just to chant. Because there are no rules, there are no regulations. Even if you're lying in bed, you just chant.
Okay.
Yeah. What I'm saying is that there really isn't anything specific about us being physically weak, because being physically weak is in one sense a blessing, because the senses are not that active. Then one is able to hear the name. It could be a little disturbing, but at the same time, if you can't do anything else, then this is the best opportunity to just concentrate on chant.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Sure. Anything else? So should we conclude today's session, and then we'll meet again next week?
Yes, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.